In this video, I'm going to introduce CodeSculptor's Viz mode, which visualizes what is actually happening when Python is running your program. Now, using this has two advantages for you. First of all, you can use it to help learn and understand what's going on in Python. Second of all, you can use it to help debug your programs. So how do you start Viz mode? Well, pretty easy. We've got a big button exactly for that right here. So clicking on Viz mode opens up a new window or a new tab in Viz mode here. And you'll see that it is Viz mode because we have an extra button that we'll explain in a little while. It has a different sample program here. The Viz mode button has changed to a tutorial button, which is, well, a tutorial on Viz mode. Okay, check that out too. Well, we've got a sample program here. How are we going to use Viz mode on your own program? How do you get your own code into the Viz mode window? Well, we've got our trusty load button here. You can load up a local file just like we could before. Or, well, we're actually going to encourage you to develop all your programs in the regular CodeSculptor window and not in Viz mode. Yeah, why? Well, one reason is simply that Viz mode's slower because it's going to be doing a lot more stuff. So, well, how can you get your code from the CodeSculptor window? Well, we're just going to copy and paste. And, well, I'll go ahead and just delete everything here. I could Control-A and backspace. My code's gone here. I'm going to go to another window where I happen to have some code that I like. And Control-A to select all of that. Control-C to copy. And then back here, Control-V to paste. Well, those were all the Windows shortcuts. If you're on a Mac, you'll need Command-A to select everything and the appropriate other shortcuts for a Mac. Similarly, if you're using Linux, use the appropriate shortcuts for Linux. So we have our code in our Viz mode. Okay, you can see we're in Viz mode because we have this button here and the tutorial button over here. And next, we're going to look at what does Viz mode actually do and how do we do it. So we're going to use the same example as Scott used in a previous video. And we can run our code and get some results. But for Viz mode, what we do is we click on the little wrench button here. That divides the console window into two parts, the upper part being our console, and then the visualization will be down here below. Now, once we're in Viz mode, we need to run our code again. What happens underneath the hood is Viz mode runs our entire program, but it remembers every single step that happened. And now we can go and review all those steps. So now that we've run our code in Viz mode, the fun begins. That we can now step through our code forward or backwards in single lines and bigger steps. Okay, to see what is actually going on, and we can see what happens at each particular step and what's defined, what's not defined. Okay, so to start off, well, you can start at any of the blue lines over here that indicate events. Okay, and at least so far, the only two events that we have is starting and ending our code. So I'm just going to click on begins to start at the beginning. Okay. So I'm going to be stepping in this section just one line at a time. We're about to do this blue line of code, which is define triangle area. So I click on it, and we've defined triangle area. Over here, that shows us that triangle area is defined as an object, the function triangle area, and it doesn't bother showing the code over here. Okay. Now, in particular, this is a global definition, so it's in what's called the global frame. More about frames in a minute. So, next we're going to run this line, step through that. Well, we're calling a function triangle area, so we're going to go back into this function. Okay. In particular, here we're passing in 3 and 8 as base and height. Okay. Okay, base and height are only defined in the function triangle area. So we have a new frame for triangle area. And we define area, computes that value. We're going to next compute the return value and return that and assign it to A1 as a global value A1. Okay. All right. Similarly, well, next we're going to print, and the result is shown up here for printing. Next, we're going to do just the same thing with different values for triangle area. We create a frame with the local values, compute the what is in the body, compute the return value, and return that. Okay. Through this, okay, we've got frames, the global frame, local frames. Each frame maps the variables in that frame to their definitions, whether it be some sort of object or some simple value. Okay. And we're going to see more about frames as we execute this program. As an aside, the term frame also has another meaning in CodeSculptor that refers to popping up new windows and drawing things. Okay, we're not talking about that use of a frame. Okay, this is a frame is a mapping between variables and their definitions. Okay. So next, well, first let me show you, okay, we can actually step backwards from things. Okay, that's kind of cute. Not as frequently useful, but in combination with other things, we'll see examples where it's useful to step backwards. Okay, but let's go back forward where we were. We define Fahrenheit to Celsius. Okay, we call it a couple times, so I'm going to skip through here a little bit more quickly. Okay, it's using local frames once again. Okay, now I'm going to slow down on this example. We're going to define Fahrenheit to Kelvin. Note that we now have 3 global functions. We have several other variables defined globally. And we're going to run these examples now. So we have K1. Oh, we're going to call another function. So what do? We call that function in its own local frame. Fahrenheit, the value passed in, happens to be 32 for this example. Okay, we do some local computation. Oh, but we're calling another function. So we are going to create yet another frame. Okay, so this frame says, well, we're computing Fahrenheit to Celsius, and we're using that function with the local value of Fahrenheit being 32. And when we're done with that, we need to go back to Fahrenheit to Kelvin and do some computation. And when we're done with that, we'll go back to the global. Okay. So, and notice furthermore that we have 2 different variables, each named Fahrenheit. In this example, they happen to have the same value, but that's not necessarily the case. We actually have Fahrenheit to Celsius has a local variable Fahrenheit, as does Fahrenheit to Kelvin. Well, furthermore, as we step once more, we have a local variable Celsius here. We return, which now we have a local variable Celsius here. Notice that those 2 different versions of Celsius didn't exist at the same time. And we continue on as with the previous examples. And we could continue on until the end. Okay, so we're somewhere in the middle of executing our program and during the visualization. What are these buttons for? Well, so single stepping can get really tedious. Okay, we'd like to be able to go in bigger steps. Okay, skip over the little details that we're not interested in. Okay, well, so first of all, if you just highlight this, it says previous breakpoint or previous event. Well, I'm just going to go up to the top. Okay, that's the previous event. We don't have any breakpoints. We're going to see what those are in just a second. So the previous event was just the beginning and went all the way back there. Okay, similarly, I can skip all the way to the end and then back to the beginning. Okay, those are the events that we have right in this program. Okay, Well, as we just saw, the interesting thing in the code here is when we start calling functions within functions. So maybe I just want to skip ahead to that. Okay, so I want to skip ahead to right here, line 28, where I call Fahrenheit to Kelvin for the first time. So I can click on line 28, right on the number here, and it's highlighted in red. Okay, I've put in a breakpoint. Okay, that if I skip ahead, it's going to go to that point. Now I can single step through there, just as we did before, or back step. And if I wanted, I could also create more breakpoints, as many as I want. Finally, once you're done stepping through your code and seeing what's happening, you can click on the wrench again and get out of this mode. And then you can run your program just as normal without actually stepping through everything. Here's a quick example for using viz mode for debugging purposes, understanding your errors better. So I've run my program that uses the quadratic equation here. It gives me an error. I look at this and I'm really confused because I've looked at this formula a number of times. It's correct. I'm dividing by 2 times a, but a is 1. So why is this giving me an error? I don't know. Let me put it in viz mode and run it there. I'm at the end where I've encountered my error, and I can back it up 1 step. Okay, and I could back it up more steps if I wanted, but in this case, I see here that the values en route are not what I expected. I thought A was 1, B was 0, C was -1, but they're not what I expected, and so I can realize, oh, I actually passed the values into my function incorrectly here. And so once I fix that, I can rerun my program and it runs correctly, gives me the right answer.